Hello, everyone. Coast to coast. We're back.
We're back within a week, 2 weeks in a
Yeah,
row.
I know.
Who are we?
How about that? How are you doing?
Yeah, good, good. I think we were kind of talking earlier. It feels like this long year of rugby is slowly winding down, but we're not quite there yet. So, settling in. The Autumn Nation series said you all can go home except for Ireland and Australia. So you're
Yeah.
packing in for a big weekend, aren't you?
Yes, came into Dublin last night, going to the game tomorrow. Really excited to see Suali'i and, disappointed Angus Bell is on the bench, but you can't have everything. But yeah, hoping for a really good game. And there should be some good buzz around it. The Joe Schmidt homecoming and the Aussies having a good November and Ireland maybe not having their best. So it's teed up for a good one.
Except I do think last week, or week just been, we were sitting here going the Scotland Australia game had all the trimmings of being an
Yeah.
it was another one where we maybe cursed it a little bit, eh?
Yeah, I did think it would be a bit closer, but I think it's just interesting because it like shows you the Aussies. Yes, they got some great results on tour at the risk of jinxing to tomorrow, but yes, they've had some great results on tour, but there's still a lot of work to do, right? Like Joe Schmidt's a really good coach, but you can only change so much so quickly. And Scotland, even though they ended up on the wrong end of, in the end, not a great scoreline against South Africa, like they've come on such a long way as a team, and they were, especially in that second half, so dominant, like by far the better team.
And it feels like the product of years of making it gel.
It does, doesn't it?
So that back line 3-4 years ago, everyone would have been like, okay, whatever. But now they are one of the slickest in world rugby for sure.
Yeah. And they've got that grunt in the pack that it's still against the historic criticism was always against the bigger teams. They got out-muscled, right? And I still think to move to the next stage, they probably need a win against Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa, maybe a big win against France, but beating one of those teams and showing that they can hang with the bigger men or with the Ireland's kind of relentlessness and pace. Like once they show they can do that, it's scary times for everybody. And I'm actually really nervous about the Six Nations because we have to go to Scotland this year. And we've come out of a few lucky escapes at Murrayfield. We haven't lost there in a long time. I was actually there the last time we lost there, but we haven't lost there in a long time. But we've had a few games where we've been very lucky, and they must be thinking like, God, if we don't do it this year, when are we going to do it?
Yeah. Oh, it feels like all on for this upcoming Six Nations.
It does. How good has the Autumn Nations been?
I've been so pleased to be so fulfilled in a November. So much rugby, but of such high quality. And we were talking earlier, right? The social team has been killing it. The broadcast has been amazing.
Yeah.
The way those two have worked together as well.
Yeah.
They've created a package out of something that should just be a random series of tests.
Yes. They've like really turned it into something. And it's a positive thing. On rugby landscape's a little bit negative in the Northern Hemisphere this week in terms of news. I don't know if you've seen it. Everybody's losing money. But it's nice that
except English CEO apparently.
Well, yeah. I mean, I need to do more reading about that because I really want to find out how it's possible that you can lose that much money and still get bonuses and stuff. But it seems from the outside crazy.
Yeah. And that's, I think, all of the Telegraph, isn't it? So, yeah, big reporting. But, yeah, shout out to the Autumn Nations. It's felt like, I don't know if obviously last year was a World Cup year and that was my first year of, like, making content. But normally I would just be watching the All Blacks games. But I'd be really interested in a read from maybe more casual fans around how compelled they felt to watch other matchups in the series, because it would feel like there's been a bit of an increase in that sort of fan.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing. Like normally, before I started making content, I still would have probably watched like 80% of the games. I wouldn't have watched everything. By the time you get to the third game of the day, it can get a bit difficult. But I've enjoyed it so much, and like there haven't actually been. We'll come on to it when we talk about last weekend, but there haven't actually been that many poor games for a neutral for me. Like even some of the games where the quality's been lower and maybe teams haven't performed as much as you'd expect, there's been storylines, like stuff's happened in the games that's made it interesting, you know? Like we were talking before we came on, we were talking about Italy, New Zealand from the weekend. Like to see how far Italy have come from the team that shipped 90 or whatever it was at the World Cup. Might not have been the highest quality game, but it was still compelling, you know?
Yeah, which is so funny because I think us All Blacks fans were kind of like, this game is so frustrating to watch because we were getting genuinely bothered by this Italy team, right? And with the memory of the World Cup, obviously we're expecting a bit more of a cricket score. So all props to the turnaround that Italy have done in a year and hopefully to a more competitive presence, obviously in the Six Nations, but in all rugby moving forward.
Yeah, like I was looking at the previous results between the teams before the game, and the best result Italy had pulled off recently was they lost 20 points to 9 in a game against the All Blacks. And to go and score a try and lose by kind of a similar margin, obviously it's a bit wider, but to actually score a try in the game and also to have moments where like they could have got more, you know, if they'd scored from that line out drive where they just couldn't stick the line out and the All Blacks just kept repelling them. It was amazing defense from New Zealand as well. Like I think you have to give it up.
Yeah, it was unreal.
But Italy could have found a way into that game. You know, I reckon the All Blacks probably would have always had an extra gear, if you're being honest. But yeah, it was still compelling as to watch.
Which is a cosign or a tick for the product itself, which for all the hand wringing over it.
Yeah, exactly. And every game. Just quickly, just on the same thing. Like every game doesn't have to be a classic. Like I feel like rugby's unique in that, like when you like, how many people watch football and how many draws, how many 0-0s, how many 1-1s, which are terrible games, and there's only goals from set plays and stuff like that. And like we all understand, if we're a football fan, that like part of following the game is that you have to sit through those sometimes. Like that's the way it works. Rugby's the only sport, it feels like, where there'll be one game that isn't entertaining and all of a sudden everyone throws their toys out the pram about, oh, this is why nobody watches it. It's like it's sport. You can't coordinate every single game. It's live. You can't coordinate every single game to be perfect. Like there's something to be interested in and like joyful about in every game. And talking about the coverage on TNT, when you've got people like Flatman and stuff doing the commentary, they find those moments and they make it so much more entertaining because they're able to pick out little things even in kind of dirges of games that are really interesting. And yeah, I just think we should be a bit more confident about the sport. It's got plenty to offer, you know?
No, I agree. And I don't know, my partner's like a casual fan, but he is found himself in a position where, the scrum battle, those minute little parts of the game, things that he can find the most tension and drama in. And those are the parts that really excite him because there are little moments all over the field, even though maybe the overall game feels like it's not necessarily full of excitement. Little mini battlefields all over in a big war. So
yeah, exactly.
I love the sport. It's the best sport in the world to me. Like, so yeah, wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. So the other games from last week, the roundup. We started with France Argentina on the Friday night. How good was that?
We talked earlier in some of our videos, right, about, I think it was you who'd said, I think it was you, it definitely wasn't me, so it was definitely you, about how Argentina feels the most similar to France in many ways in terms of how they play, even like some of the more out of game pieces about them as a team. So it was really exciting to see these two teams match up. I'm glad they kind of came back in that second spell. That was a great Argentinian kind of fight back. I guess it kind of, in ways, was quite similar to that All Blacks performance, where they just clawed their way back in through just what has become quite a formidable lineup of 15, 23 players, honestly. Truly very impressive.
And they, it didn't go for them in the first half. Like the croc roll yellow card right at the start of the game was unfortunate. And then they had the penalty try as well. And like for stuff like that, I feel like a yellow and a penalty try is too much jeopardy. Like I know they want to. I do think it was the correct call. Like I don't think you can't be running backwards and then flick the ball back over your over your shoulder and get away with it like that. You can't do that, but it felt like kind of an instinctive action. I don't know how deliberate it was, although the best players are always really good at making deliberate acts look a little bit accidental and then doing the "what me" face afterwards. But yeah, just like so much to love about that game. And the worst thing about the yellow card and the penalty try is it would have been the try of the series if they scored. Like the double kick ahead and then BLBRA with the pace. Like it would have been amazing. But like you say, Argentina fought back in.
Pardon me?
Like you say, Argentina fought back in. And you know, they had one try off the wasn't given as a try. Looked like maybe it was a try off the driving maul. And Luke Pierce said it was held up and they didn't go to the TMO. I'm assuming the TMO checked those in the background now. Either way.
Yes. I can never be quite sure which version of the rules we are playing.
Yeah.
So
it's confusing.
Whether it's phases, whether it's the whole way, whether it's foul play, not too sure.
Surely though, if they're checking every score for possible infringements in the build-up, like surely they're checking every near score. But anyway, if Argentina get that try, it's what? 1.5 score game? Like they're kind of back in it. So they weren't that far off, but France are just scary good at the moment. Like,
which is wild because Six Nations, they were crap. Like, obviously still moments of France in there, but they were decidedly by their own standards, for whatever reason, World Cup hangover.
I'll tell you the reasons. No Dupont, no Flamont, no Mifu for most of the tournament. When Flamont Mifu came back into the team, the results ticked back up. Like, obviously, they missed Dupont loads, but their big USP as a team, Dupont's amazing, obviously, but their big USP as a team for me is they can also do the 6-2. They have like South Africa level giant bodies and they can just throw new ones onto the field. You know, they beat Argentina without Aldrit. It's just sitting in the stands. Like, scary depth, especially in the pack.
And like we haven't really even touched on, like Ramos has been amazing.
Ramos has been incredible. Yeah, Ramos is probably like up there with the best players in the entire series from any team. Been brilliant. Kicking out of hands, really good. They always kick off the front foot. It always seems to work for them. His place kicking is immaculate. He just doesn't miss place kicks. Yeah, scary times ahead for the Six Nations, I think.
It's going to be a goodie, I feel. I think it's going to be it's got all-time... probably shouldn't say that because then it will be an absolute flop. But, yeah. It's been good as a Southern Hemisphere fan being able to, get a good look at everyone I guess, Christmas and then Six Nations. But you really get... It's highlighting for me now that, like, Geordie Barrett's going into the URC and they're saying, he's going to start potentially on December the 8th, which is in 2 weeks. Not even a week. Like, that is so different for us. Like, our players have come back. They're going into Christmas holidays. They get out of this. They're not even... Our international players don't do Super Rugby preseason until, I think, like, late January. You know, like, it's just such a different vibe. Like, I'll be really interested to see what Geordie Barrett's reflections are because I guess he's going to play out URC, then do internationals with the ABs.
It's going to be a long year for him.
Yeah, I'll be really interested in his reflections. Because what are those French
players
do?
They play even more games because the top 14 goes on even longer.
So they go straight back now?
They will go... I don't know how quickly... Like, there've been some top 14 games during the Autumn Nations. So I don't know how long. I guess it probably depends on the clubs, how much rest they give them and stuff like that. But yeah, they'll basically be straight back in.
That's wild. Yeah. It's just so different. It's just so different, eh? You don't even realize until you're watching more and you're like, this is a completely different setup landscape entirely.
Yeah. Like, but the thing is, both sides of the coin are impressive because I find it really impressive that, like, All Blacks players can play comparatively not as much rugby. You'd assume, like, not be as in the groove, not be as conditioned and all those things, and then come out and just turn it on the international stage. And then it's also impressive that, like, South African players and French players who play so much, just that, like, I mean, how are you not constantly injured? You know?
I hope those strength and conditioning coaches are being paid the big bucks, because that
Yeah.
is keeping body intact is wild. But yeah, so if we look at France and Argentina then, as they now finished their Autumn Nation Series obligations, how are we assessing them both in terms of their campaigns?
Well, France have had, they had 3 games, two really tough games. And to win all 3, they're up there with the Boks as having the best autumn, right?
Yep.
For me, anyway. And then for Argentina, it's like, it's disappointing, but they just had a massive Rugby Championship series. They were missing some big names for most of the autumn. I mean, it sounds like you're making excuses, but what I mean is it doesn't undo the good work they've done this year. And like, they'll have better autumns in the future, I don't think it's a stick you can beat them with or anything.
Yeah, and I think you said last week that like this is obviously their first tour with Contepomi as head coach, but like realistically, I don't think Argentina were doing that many Northern Hemisphere tours, really, were they, prior to this year? Or have I got that completely?
Oh no, they're always there.
Always there.
Yeah, they usually they play Ireland a lot in the autumn. Like, we've had many good battles with Argentina over the years. Like, some really great games. Like, I remember Ronan O'Gara dropping a goal in the last minute to beat them. Like, they've almost beaten us in Dublin a few times in November, but I don't think they've ever actually won there. Yeah, I mean, someone said in my comments on the France video the other day, no Chocobaras, no party, which I thought was funny. They really have missed him. They really, really have missed him. And it's not because the replacements aren't good or anything, like Moroni's class, but Chocobaras is something else. Like, he was so good in the Rugby Championship. If you're competing with like Dialende and players like that, you've got something special. But yeah, I'd say they'll pick themselves up and go again. But France definitely get like an A+. They're right up the top of the tree with the Boks, and probably New Zealand as well, to be fair, because like a 1-point loss to France away from home is not a big deal.
It's not. But I still think you'd find many a Kiwi hesitant to give them much more than a B.
Well, I think famously the Kiwi rugby public are difficult to please, but it's been for sure a good autumn for the All Blacks.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next cab off the rank. Who have we got? I can't even remember the order that these games. So it's all.
We also have Ireland smashing Fiji and South Africa smashing Wales. Where, yeah, disappointing for Fiji. Like, South Africa smashing Wales, I think we all knew what would happen, and maybe it's just as a result of that. Sorry, can you hear that in the background? I'm in my parents' house, and the pipes make all kind of weird noises.
No, can't hear a thing.
Oh, okay. Oh well, it's really distracting me. South Africa, we always knew we were going to smash Wales. Wales actually showed a lot of character, I thought, and like, South Africa only had to play for 20 minutes. Like, it is scary how good they are at the moment.
I feel like I'm like a broken record, but it just point stands. Like, they're not even at 3/4 of the way to the ceiling. Like, there is so much room for growth, and Rusty's obviously signposted it with the use of his players. The rotation, the depth is scary. I feel like everyone's saying that, but I can't think of much more to say, because it's
hard
scary hours.
Yeah, it's hard to like come up with anything interesting or unique when it's like all you need to do is just simply state what's happened. Like, they've gone and won 3 games. They had hairy moments against Scotland, but overall always looked comfortable winning that game. They didn't even pick their first team for that game, by the way. They went and beat England by 9, but if they'd been playing World Cup rugby, it would have been by 12 or 15, because they would have kicked a few more points. The fact that they're trying out all different players at out half. Like, I thought Jordan Hendrickson was good against Wales. He looks like another big one for the future, especially if, like, when they have to look at a post Dialende world, maybe having a second distributor at 12 instead of another flanker who can also run and do everything. I think he's so underrated, Dialende. It was good to see him get in the dream team. But all you can do is just list players and talk about how good they are. Like, it does get boring, I'm sure, to listen to.
I think it's almost like a bit of an eye test as well when your recall of the team of a nation that isn't your team, you can reel off the whole
so true.
right? Like, or not.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, it's our, if we're making content, it's important that we know. But I would feel pretty confident that most casual fans of rugby could list off pretty much that whole 15, 23, potentially 30 of those players off the top of their head.
Yeah.
Like that's what I felt about the 2015 All Blacks. Like it's just got something
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
It's just moved into this thing, and it's so good for the sport. It's so good for South Africa as a country, and we can just enjoy like we love.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
And from the top of their bounce to Ireland, who seem to be sort of in. How does it look from the outside? Because from the inside, there's always so much negativity around Ireland rugby. There's always. It just feels like it's part of the national character is like every minute detail gets scrutinized. And because we've been on top and then fallen off before, I feel like everybody's worried that it's happening again. But, the reality is if you're not the All Blacks in 2011, you aren't going to go around beating everybody all the time for the next 5 years. It's just not going to happen, there definitely has been a drop in form. I don't think anybody would dispute that. They haven't quite looked as good in 2024 as they did in 2023. But, there's a lot of panicking, which to me feels unnecessary.
Which, and again, I feel like I'm recycling talking points from last week, but in July, when you faced South Africa, I know it was only a 2-test series, so you did get a great look at the team, but there was none of this panic despite even that loss. So that's a really interesting thing to question why, against these teams, obviously, I think the All Blacks loss was disappointing in the manner it happened, right? It wasn't. It was kind of a little bit going down without too much of a fight, which was the disappointing part. But I think from the outside,
they didn't really fire a shot, right? That was the concerning nature of it. But I mean, that happens.
That happens. It happens. Like, and also, yeah, obviously, we were very happy to beat you, like regardless of whether you fired a shot or not. So, all good on our end. But from the outside looking in, you obviously. Andy Farrell's obviously a consummate professional, but you do wonder about his eyes are probably in two places a little bit at the moment, given Lions tour coming up that he's the head coach of. There's obviously more people around him in the Ireland setup who will take charge of many things, but
that change in itself has an impact on everybody, right? Like that change all takes a little bit of time to bed in. They're probably doing like a staggered transition. All of those things will affect the team a little bit. And, if you lose 1% here and there, you notice that in Test rugby.
Because of those fine margins, we went 23 minutes.
We were always going to get there. But,
No. So I think that's something that I was just thinking about. But I don't think there's any cause for a huge concern, but it just sounds like Irish people were just like Kiwi people, and when you get really good at something, especially as a small nation, right?
Yeah,
punching above your weight becomes very important to the national psyche, and the threat of not being able to claim like a great victory as a small nation, you start to get a bit concerned about it. So, I don't know. I think maybe the only thing that would make me side eye, and this is from someone who's not on the inside obviously, or like an Irish fan or Irish person, but like it does feel like a bit of an aging team. Like it doesn't feel like maybe that side of things is being managed so much. But I also am not like the URC and who's coming up,
Good segue for Fiji though, for the Ireland Fiji game, because we got to see Isachukwu finally in the back row. He had a good solid debut. We got to see Sam Prendergast at 10. Controversial red card incident notwithstanding, he had a good game, and he's starting again against the Aussies. That's caused a little bit of a civil war among Irish rugby fans because Jack Crowley being the Munster 10 and Sam Prendergast being a Leinster player, there's been a feeling for a long time that Leinster players get preferential treatment when it comes to national selection. And them picking Prendergast has obviously upset a lot of people. But really interesting comments from Andy Farrell on that score, where they asked him about the options at 10, and he said, Jack Crowley's been good for us for a long time. We know all about him. Frawley and Prendergast need to improve. So I guess the way he's looking at it is, how are they going to improve if they don't have time in the jersey? How are they going to improve if we don't give them opportunities? So I don't think it's favoritism as much as it's us learning from being so reliant on Johnny Sexton in the past that we need more than one guy who can come in and do it. And if that is the logic behind it, then I'm completely on board. Like, we do need to give other players a chance, And maybe if Frawley hadn't had such a difficult 20 minutes when he came on against New Zealand, and let's say Ireland had managed to, because they were a point ahead when he came on. Let's say they'd managed to sneak that game and things hadn't gone so badly. I think he'd probably be starting this weekend. I think it's just about coming up with other players who can play in those positions.
Yeah, which is, and the 10 jersey in particular is always going to have that debate around it. It's hotly contested, important to the structure of your team. Like, I know a lot of New Zealand fans are very much like, okay, well, even if Richie Mo'unga comes back, he's 30, D-Max 29, Bodie's going to be 36 by the next World Cup. Who the heck is coming up underneath that and will have time to get into the jersey? So I think that little shift from Andy Farrell, maybe is a learning directly from that World Cup, right? So
but look at the value. Look at the value you got out of having D-Mac and Beauden Barrett. So Beauden Barrett gets a concussion against England. You win that game. He's out. Could be panic stations, but D-Mac comes in and has like an immaculate kicking performance, and you beat Ireland. Like, having those two players, whatever you think about relative strengths and weaknesses and stuff, having two players who can cope at test level with such a difficult job is massive.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I think it's and look, I know not everyone thinks like New Zealand and probably like Ireland now, right? Like, I think our national mentality is there's no such thing as a friendly. Every match, it's about winning record, all those things.
Yeah.
But if there's ever a time in the international calendar to experiment a little bit as a nation who likes to pride themselves on their winning record, it potentially is this time of year. So,
well, I think so, because it's the only time. Really, it's less important for Southern Hemisphere teams, but for the Northern Hemisphere teams, it's really important because it's the only time you get that exposure to the teams that if you want to go to the World Cup, you're going to face them in the latter stages. And people need to get comfortable with what it's like playing in those matches against those teams. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. And Fiji.
Just disappointing, wasn't it?
Just, fell a little bit flat. I guess it also comes out of hope and desire for them to reach their potential as a union. But obviously,
but I mean, if you look at their results, through November, right? Like, beating Wales in Cardiff for the first time ever, amazing. Like, a high point for Fiji, taking nothing away from that. Brilliant performance. But like, Wales are massively struggling. And, breaking from tier 2 into tier 1, it's one thing to get a couple of results against big teams. It's another thing entirely to consistently perform against bigger teams who've got more money and more players and better resources. And like, obviously Fiji have amazing players, but the really top guys aren't based in Fiji. Access is difficult. Cohesion is difficult. Taking a pacing against Scotland and Ireland, it doesn't reflect necessarily that bad on Fiji. I think it shows you that Scotland and Ireland are two really good teams, and that the challenge ahead of Fiji is massive to try and break into that top level.
Yeah, and even just the travel side of things, right? Like the length that they're having to travel, for those who are obviously based in Fiji, which is the majority. Tours are hard. Like, especially Northern Hemisphere one. Obviously progress or a good thing with that Welsh result, but they will be wanting better for themselves too, right? Like, so we've got to, I guess, keep aspiring for them, because we know what they can do. We just want to see it consistently. So fingers crossed.
But Rome wasn't built in a day. Like, these things do take time, and they won't be too disheartened by it. Like, they'll know they'll have plenty of stuff to work on as a result.
And I think the big win is probably, or the most promising part is, I guess, the number of players from the Indroa in
Yeah.
their national team getting international experience. Like they're getting the full pathway, which is what it was intended to do. So
Yeah.
that's the pleasing part, and that's what's going to help them be a team who is able to consistently deliver against
Exactly.
those bigger
Especially
sides.
long term, right? Like they're not really looking at the next 2-3 years to see the real benefits of the Drua. Like it's 10 years down the line where you're going to see the real benefits. So definitely a good dose of perspective.
Look at us. We're so reasonable.
And then a quick word on, well, not much to say about Wales. Brave in defeat. South Africa hardly getting out of third gear and walking it.
Franco
Great year for them.
Mostert, incredible line for a lock for that try. That was just like gorge. Loved it.
Beautiful. But how often do you see teams leave that gap open at test level? You really don't see it.
No.
And fair play to the Boks. Like you beat what's in front of you, and they did it well. Like after the first, I'm glad they kept it social for them in the end. After the first 20-30 minutes, I was like, God, they're going to get 70, 80. This is going to be a disaster. But Wales hung in there, and you know they got a couple scores, which was nice. But it's just hard to see how this South Africa team doesn't dominate for the next couple of years going into the next World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and everyone's just trying to replicate what they're doing,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
that's where the innovation is happening. So that's always a really positive sign, you know, if everyone is chasing them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
That's the measure. They've put the stake in the ground, and I think they're going to throw it another 100 meters probably next year. So
yeah.
Can't wait for them to come to Eden Park.
Yeah. Can the rest of us keep up? And we've got that All Blacks South Africa tour starting next year, right?
Year after, 26.
Oh, is it the year after? Oh, okay. I'm too excited. Either way. Either way. And you know, in the spirit of, it was the World Rugby Awards this week. In the spirit of kind of end of year appraisals, we had a go at some coast to coast awards.
Our problem is that I think you and I, like, we take a stand somewhat, but we try to be pretty balanced, and it means that making decisions like this is difficult for us.
Yeah, handing out awards doesn't come naturally.
No.
So get ready to hear some long lists. We thought, looking at the Autumn Nation series, we would look at player of the series, try of the series, and the moments of the series, like just the most dramatic or the most fun or the most exciting moments. So we'll start with try of the series. And what we thought we'd do is go through the long list of our favorite tries from the tour, and then we're going to pick one each. And because it's coast to coast, we'll pick one from the south and one from the north.
That makes perfect sense. God, we're good.
Yeah. Well, let's see what people think. So on the long list, we've got that Talea finish against England in the corner, where he's got two guys trying to tackle him and he still managed to dot it down. We couldn't figure out which of the Australia tries against England was the one where they broke from their own 22. I think the Williams one, sorry, not Williamson. Mapimpi against Scotland, where Willie LaRue did that weird kind of through ball kick, where they were just both on the same wavelength. BLBRA against the All Blacks, where he stripped Sever Reece and Leonard Brown. Muntz against Wales. Jordan against Ireland. Superman Max Jorgensen against England. The Harry Potter finish last week.
That was ridiculous.
I think I was watching it on Stan, and the commentators did very well to resist any magic puns. I would thought that was going to be. I thought we'd never hear the end of it.
No, that was my whole Instagram feed in the week leading up to the game. Just all over it.
God, it must be fair sharing a name with a famous character like that. And then Bayliss against Australia as well. We had to put in for the goose, just for the what do you think his percentage chance of scoring from there is? Like if you run that into some kind of a program, like it's got to be low.
Very low. He also turned, did a little spin, like he was on the way out, in very trajectory. So he did very well to get that over the line. Finisher.
You don't see many people hand off Harry Williams like that. Like, Harry Williams is a big lad. That's not easy. So that was a long list. Who's your winner?
I think for the moment and the execution under immense pressure, for me, it's Max Jorgensen with the winner against England, because not only, he had a bit of free space to run in for that try, but the finish he executed to perfection. A great dive. He was pointing at the camera, and it's like one of those things.
Yeah.
It would have been mortifying, but he nailed it, and it made the moment so much better. He had the energy we needed for that moment. So for that, it's going to Max Jorgensen for me.
Okay.
Where are you thinking?
From the north, I think it has to go to BLBRA for the try against the All Blacks, just for the straight line pace and like the excitement of watching someone chase somebody down like that is top drawer. And I wonder, I'd love to see like him, Grant Williams, maybe Wynakolo. I'm trying to think of players who've got real straight line speed, like not just being evasive. But at the end of the Autumn Nation series, it would be amazing if we could have like a combine where we get to see the strongest players, the fastest players. I would absolutely love that. So yeah. Well, congratulations, Jorgensen and Len Ikitau and Louis BLBRA.
We have no prize, but just know you are winners in our eyes.
Eternal glory.
Eternal. All right.
Player of the tournament. Player of the series.
Tough.
Really tough.
Do we go through the long list per country?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'll do South. Maybe you do North.
Yes. So, all right. I'll do the first northern one is England. Marcus Smith. Absolutely class the whole time, right? Even when England have struggled in games, he's been brilliant.
Yeah. For Fiji, we've gone with Caleb Muntz, just to stand out, kind of picked up where he left off pre-World Cup last year. Just going to be... He's so crucial to that Fiji attack, and I can't wait to see how he goes in Super this year, to be honest.
Yeah. Who have we got? For Ireland, I think Doris. We were humming and hawing. Hasn't been Ireland's best November. There have been players who've had like individual standout. Like I thought Craig Casey was very good against Fiji, but Doris overall continues to be just super physical, really influential. Oh, actually, do you know who? I've changed my mind as I'm talking. You know who it is? It's Van der Fleer. He's actually been our best, most consistent player.
Yeah, what are we
through November?
About?
Yeah, he was really good against the All Blacks. Really good against Argentina. Loads of energy. Sorry, Kaylin. But yeah, Josh Van der Fleer, Ireland's player of the series.
Like that moment at the Oscars where they
said
it was actually going to Moonlight. Sorry, wrong loose. No, agree with that. Okay. For the All Blacks, we went back and forth on a few, but where we landed was Mr. Tamaiti Williams, because he kind of took Ethan de Groot's jersey and said, not so fast, this is mine now. And he obviously had some incredible carries as well. So he's still so young. I don't think he's over 23. So what a moment for him in a big year already. But yeah, really impressive stand-up performer for the All Blacks this autumn /
definitely
spring.
For Scotland, plenty of candidates here, but we went for Darcy Graham. If they can keep him fit, he's such a point of difference for them. Had a brilliant autumn. Hopefully we get to see plenty of him in the Six Nations. Yeah.
That's it. Well, I think he just forms such an axis with Duhan as well. Like that's a pretty intimidating wing.
And something really different as well, right? Like you have to prepare completely differently to try and deal with those two guys. That variation probably helps. But I mean, you just have to watch Graham, right? He's box office. Like he can beat people so many different ways. There's no point talking about it endlessly. Everyone can see how good he is.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's where we're at. Everything's just been talked through, so we're repeating what everyone else has said, but that's okay. Thanks for listening, everyone. For Australia, a couple of real arrivals on the international scene, a couple of throwaways from the Eddie Jones era re-establishing themselves, and we've probably chosen the person who said a big middle finger to Eddie Jones the most for leaving him out of the World Cup, and that is Tom Wright. Just scintillating, slippery, breaking people's ankles left and right, just borderline unstoppable. So a very good player in, obviously they've still got a game to go, but what has been a pretty strong performance in the Order Nation series from the Wallabies.
Yeah. Did you see he went on, I can't remember the name, is it More or Nothing? The podcast with it's like Ryan Wilson and Max Laheath. Great interview on there. Spoke really well, and he seems like a bit of a funny character as well.
A bit of a joker.
Yeah, well, Aussies and all that. Who else have we got from the Northern Hemisphere? Wales. Well, Jack Morgan and Dowie Lake just holding the whole thing up. Always brilliant, always tireless. Whenever the rebuild kicks in and things start to look better for Wales, they'll be at the center of it. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah, absolutely. Shining lights.
Absolutely.
Argentina, we had Albanos. Just unreal. I really thought he probably would have been the 10 in the Dream 15 at the World Rugby Awards. He's just been incredible for them. Under the tutelage, obviously, of Contepomi, leaps and bounds. So huge year for him in general. Great autumn. Can't wait to watch more of him. Seriously.
Yeah, absolute class. Who's next? Italy. Tommaso Menoncello. Scored a try against the All Blacks. Had a great autumn series. Generally looks... I mean, he'd probably get in a lot of other teams, right? There's not that many players in the Italy team where you look at them and you think they'd get in most Six Nations teams, but I think Menoncello would have a pretty good shot.
Yeah. Just like, again, if I think of people who haven't been watching Six Nations, like All Blacks fans who watch that game, someone who they would have left being like, oh,
yeah,
I know a bit about that guy now. Yeah, absolutely. We're clearly avoiding talking about the Springboks.
Well, let's leave them till last. Leave them till last. The other one is just Japan, because we don't want to leave Japan unmentioned. And just Dylan Riley. Like, I feel for him because they've taken some pastings, but he always looks so good. I'd actually love to, just like as a fan, to get a different perspective, I'd love to see him playing for a better team and see what sort of impact he'd have at test level, because he looks like he's made for it, and Japan just aren't in a great place right now. But yeah, looks a great player.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. The Springboks.
Yes.
The reason we find this so challenging is because they're all been pretty awesome, and also Rusty has cycled through so much of the team over their only 3 tests. It feels like I've seen 100 players playing. So it makes it quite difficult to judge on the basis of consistency over the whole series. But there's been a number of standout players. Do we want to talk about some of them?
Yes. My list I've got, well, we'll come back to it, but Ox, Khaleesi, Creel, Dialende, Pollard. I mean, there's probably more names that could go in there.
Yeah. Like, that's not even including Peter Septitoy. He's not even on there.
Including World Player of the Year.
And then not including Twitter's favorite player of all time, Cheslin Colby. Like, that's the quality of this team at the moment. And so much has been made, I think, of the Springboks. God, I can't help but leap into grandiose statements about this team. But, a team being... It's always been a team. The Springboks have always been a team that talk about, it's not bigger than... No one player is bigger than the team. It's all about the team. And that's, I think, what this is reflecting, right? That the team level has shifted so much because the individual performances across the board are all for the team, and it's producing some incredible performances, and it makes it very hard to single out one player.
Well, let's force ourselves to single out one player. If it was, do you know what? I know who mine is. We talked about this a little earlier. If you had to choose one, are you with me or would you choose a different player? Because mine is Andre Pollard. I think I'd go for Pollard.
Because your case was very convincing, and I think you should share that with the people.
We talk a lot. We all get really excited because they have so many options at 10, and we've talked a lot about how they want to open up the attack, and they've tried Lebok, and like maybe it looks like that experiment's coming to an end. They're trying Hendricks. Sasha Feinberg Ngomazulu was amazing in the Rugby Championship, and we almost all forgot about Pollard, and faultless in the automations, like absolutely faultless. Came on against England and was ridiculous. Didn't put a foot wrong. Came on against Scotland as well, I think. Or did he start? Either way, brilliant automation series from him. And for someone who gets dismissed as like just a kicker a lot of the time, just showing that like there's actually so much in his game. Like he's a big guy, so he's brilliant in defense. He's really good under the high ball, kicking out of hand, obviously brilliant. He carries off first phase a lot for the Boks, which like, again, gets swept under the rug. Such a good all-round player. And as we know, the minerals for whatever kick you want to give him. So yeah, let's have some Pollard love. It's been too long since the World Cup final and the last installment.
We're acting like we're dragging out like someone. Nobody...
So this guy's kicked them to 2 World Cups.
Remember this guy, like beat up old childhood toy, but it's Andre Pollard. No, I agree. I think the impressive part is that any player who is able to evolve, well, there's obviously been conversations about what he was like sort of under 20s level, but bring in different elements to his game at this stage in his career is hugely impressive. So I'll gladly second your vote for Andre as the Springboks player of the series in and amongst a team of great players. So a challenge. But did we say that we were going to single it down to one, or did we decide that was impossible across the whole autumn nations?
I think we can pick one. We can pick one, but any of okay. If we pick a northern and a southern, honestly, in terms of like whose reputation has had the biggest boost, oh god, it's difficult. It's really difficult because I also for France, we gave it to Louis Bielbiaré, but there's actually quite a lot of other French players who were class over the autumn. Picking one is going to be so hard. Although maybe I would just go for Marcus Smith.
Yeah. Did we forget to talk about France? Sorry, France.
No, we did. We did, but we didn't talk about any of the other players. But again, yeah. Well, we've walked ourselves down the path at this point, so we've got to stick with our calls. So I would say from the Northern Hemisphere, I'd say Marcus Smith. I think he's been the most impressive. His stocks will have gone up the most.
Yeah.
This November.
And in a losing team to be able to do that shows your class, right? Yeah.
So who's your Southern Hemisphere pick?
It's Tom Wright.
Okay.
I think that's who it is. I don't know. I just love watching.
Yeah, I love watching him play too.
So maybe it's a personal pick. Maybe it's subjective. But I think in terms of like stocks rising, if you think about like what he's going to bring into next year, into his franchise, but also then thinking about Lions Tour, he's cemented himself as a first on the team sheet sort of guy.
Yeah. As you said, didn't even go to the World Cup.
No. What the heck?
Now looking like a superstar. All right. Okay, we're 49 minutes in. What about just a favorite moment from the Autumn Nations? Because we've prepared a couple. We've actually got one for each week. Will we do all of them?
Yeah, we'll keep it brief. I'll try not to talk about a certain one too much because it makes me because it was my favorite moment of the year.
First weekend, that double miss kick from England. The George Ford hitting the post. Just the silliness of that whole passage of play. Hitting the post. Patrick Tuipulotu drops the ball. There's a scrum. England get mashed in the scrum, and then the drop goal goes wide. Like, just madness.
And horrible to watch as a non-neutral.
Yeah, but also amazing, though. Well, okay, yeah, fair. Yeah. You're involved. Amazing for a neutral. Like,
and that set up the whole series, did it not? Like,
yeah.
We were away laughing when that happened. And I think Paddy Tuipulotu just did an interview actually where he kind of talked about knocking it on. He was like, I was so relieved when he missed that kick. Yeah.
I'll bet when you win the game, you get rinsed in the dressing room afterwards for that. Like,
100%.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Week 2. You want to do week 2?
Week 2. We had 2 very iconic moments. The first, of course, being in that win with the Wallabies over England. Len Ikitau, now known as Flicky Tau. We have the offload that will be framed and put in museums all across Australia, all across England for the next 50 years. Just incredible. And obviously, because of the result, even better. But the other moment, and my favorite moment of the year, was Rieko Ioane leading the haka, stepping into the fire at the Aviva. The framing of it, like when the camera came overhead to reveal that he was in the middle of the circle. And I recorded it, watching it, because obviously we thought he might do it and being like, is it him? Is it him? It's him. And obviously backed up with a win. So I think that whole week of setup and the reveal was just cinema. Loved it.
Yeah.
Every single part of it.
The following week, we had Fiji beating Wales for the first time ever in Cardiff, and the celebrations. What a moment for Fiji.
Huge. I remember when they I know it obviously wasn't this game, but it just reminds me of when they beat England last year and the commentators go, "All hail Fiji!" You know, like that elation in that moment and what it means.
Just people getting carried away, right? That's what you want to see.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
And
that's the whole point of it.
One of the most iconic rugby venues in the world as well. Like, what a place to win. Huge.
Yeah. And speaking of iconic rugby venues, the following week, just the moment is just all 80 minutes of France against New Zealand and the 10 minutes beforehand. The haka, the way they turned the lights down and they put the spotlight on, the crowd was silent. And then the noise when it ended, and then just one of the best test matches of the year. Like, that's my moment. That game is my favorite thing about the whole thing. Like, my poor missus, we were watching the game together, and she just had to listen to me babbling about how great it was, how much I was enjoying it. Just amazing. Loved it.
Yeah, unreal. What a treat. What a treat. The other thing I think worth noting is that Will Jordan in this series broke Jonah Lomu's record for number of tries scored for the All Blacks. Wait, that can't be the right stat. I probably should Google that properly because he's not got the most tries, but he surpassed Jonah Lomu, on the list of all-time tries or whatever it is for the All Blacks. So just to be breaking a Jonah Lomu record is obviously a big moment in anyone's career. So I think worth shouting out. Yeah.
What is his strike rate now? Let's have a quick look. Oh, have you noticed this? If you're trying to research rugby players on Wikipedia, they count the number of points scored. They don't tell you how many tries are in there. So you have to do mental maths every time you want to figure out how many tries somebody scored.
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
38 tries in 41 tests.
That's gnarly. Yeah, so Jonah Lomu had 37 tries and Will Jordan now has 38. So
pretty amazing. And especially to be an All Blacks fullback / winger, where your shelf life is usually about 3 seasons, to carry on the way he has, like, it shows you how good he is.
Absolutely. Is that
all right? Oh, that's our lot.
Those are our moments.
Those are our moments.
Do we briefly touch on, obviously there's still one game to go. Technically it's not all over.
Yes.
What's the best moment of the year? And we've gone through a whole
best game of all time. I hope it's a good one. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I mean, that's all right. I hope it's a good one. I don't really know what to expect because, like, the last time Australia came to Ireland in the autumn, year before the World Cup, we were expected to smash them, and it was really, really tight. It was only a late penalty that let Ireland give the game away or win the game. Sorry, and I've heard Jake Gordon talking in the pre-match to this in the build-up about it still keeps him awake at night giving away that penalty. And yeah, so it could, it could be really, really tight. I thought the Scotland game would be tighter than it was, and that gives me a bit more hope as an Ireland fan that maybe it won't be as squeaky as we're expecting. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like one of those games that anything can happen because the Joe Schmidt factor as well. He knows all about us. He helped make us. So, you just think back to like the Will Jordan try in the World Cup quarterfinal, where just had the feel of
Richie
inside
Mo'unga.
knowledge. Just had the feel of Schmidt taking Richie Mo'unga aside and saying, they leave a bit of a gap here sometimes. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. And you know what as well? Like the thing I'm worried about is Schmidt's like a breakdown specialist. And our breakdown hasn't been great. Against the All Blacks, we really struggled there. And you get the feeling in the first 20 minutes, if the Aussies really target the breakdown, and then if they get on the right side of the ref and they win a few penalties or they win a few steals in the first 20 minutes, it could be a really long day for us. Could be frustrating, but we'll see.
We'll see. And you also wonder about, again, we've touched on like the length of the season and potentially like, teams, people having to go back to their franchises, their clubs, whatever, for whatever games remain for the rest of the year. But these people are pretty tired. Like it's been a big year.
There's been a lot of rugby.
So like who knows what version of these teams we're gonna get on the last test of the year.
Well, that's why I like the Prendergast selection for Ireland. Like that's something new. That's an injection of something new. Because he's a younger, less experienced player, everyone's probably going to feel like, well, I have to be 100% on my job because we know he's still learning and he's still figuring out the position. And I did think like the changes for Ireland against Fiji last week, they brought a lot of energy. So hopefully they can carry that energy into this week with some of the more experienced players. But, overall, I just want to see a good match. I came home for Ireland, New Zealand, and as good as New Zealand were on the night, it wasn't a great match. So hoping for a good match this time out.
We're manifesting. We're back on our manifesting.
Absolutely.
Thing.
Yeah. Sam Prendergast up on the vision board. All right.
Amazing. Well, I think we're under an hour this time, team.
We are just.
It's because we didn't talk about the entirety of the Springboks team under Player of the Year.
Yeah, we could have. We could have given you another 20 minutes. But all right. Well, thank you so much for watching, everybody, during the Automation series. Sorry it was a little patchy, but
yes.
Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it.
We'll be back at some point.
We will be back
when.
For sure. Undecided. We need a break. We need a break as well, I think.
Yeah. But we will be back. Maybe Six Nations. Who knows? We will. Yes. That kicks off too soon. Oh gosh, when does that kick off?
We'll post some updates though. And you know what? As well, we should come back for whenever Geordie makes his debut for Leinster. We'll come back. We'll do a little special.
So we might be back next week. Is what I'm saying.
Oh god, yeah.
After all this.
Maybe we'll wait. Maybe we'll see. But we'll post an update on the channel anyway. Thank you for listening and watching and commenting and stuff. It's been awesome.
It's been a great year. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely week.